Okay, I'm going to call the April 9th, 2015 meeting of the Marin Local Agency Formation Commission to order, and I will ask Candace, please, to go to the roll.
Judy Arnold is absent, so it's an empty seat. Jeff Blanchfield,
Here.
Carla Condon.
Here.
Damon Conley,
Here.
Craig K. Murray,
Here.
Gary Phillips, absent. Dennis Rodoni.
Here.
Alternates seated in the audience, Christopher Burdick. Jack Baker. Roll has been taken.
Great, we have a quorum, and thus we can do business. I'm going to lay out a roadmap for what we're going to do this evening, so only half of you get lost in this process. As you know, this is Dennis Rodoni's last meeting, and we're going to have a little reception for him by all of us out in the foyer there, here just in a few minutes. Then we'll reconvene here after we've sampled the cake with that peculiar looking drawing on the top of it. I can't figure that out. And then Dennis will, as vice chair, will sit as chair through the remainder of the agenda until the item number 8, the public hearing that deals with the work program, when I will come back and sit in for the remainder of the commission meeting as the chair. Before we retire outside, I do want to acknowledge Dennis. You know, after Barbara Heller left on my left, who always used to tell me what to do, and if I didn't follow it, Gizmo, her dog, would bite my ankle. But when Barbara left, I was sort of adrift. Fortunately, Dennis on my right, after he rolled his eyes a few times at my many mistakes, would get me on the right path. And the other thing I found out, that Dennis has been here just about as long as I have. He holds the record for the most LAFCO meetings attended by a commissioner. This is his 98th meeting, and that's called public service. In addition to his role at the North Marin Water District, you know, he's put in 98 meetings here at Marin LAFCO. Well, as usual, we have a plaque commending Dennis for his efforts here. And I'm just going to say a few words from here, because there's nothing more deadly than someone reading many whereases. And I don't see a therefore, so I think one of the things that's really highlighted here about Dennis that I think we all admire is his objectivity, his integrity, and his humanity. I think that speaks a lot about Dennis, and I think we've all felt that way. He has been an excellent commissioner, someone that has worked with us all very well, and someone that we've all admired. And I know I really have appreciated being on this board with Dennis, and I'm sure many of you have comments you'd like to pass on to him when we are having our cake and coffee, cake and coffee outside. So if we could pick up, go outside, we'll be out there for, about 15, 20 minutes, and then we'll come back in and we'll continue with our meeting.
Thanks, Jeff. First, just thank everyone for the cake and the coffee and for being here tonight for my last meeting. In particular, I want to just thank my wife, who's in the audience. The first time in 98 meetings, so it must be a special one. The rest of the agenda is, first of all, public comment, opportunity for anyone to comment on something not on the agenda tonight. And if you'd like to, could you raise your hand or come up to the podium, please? Seeing no one, we'll move on to the action or possible action calendar. And the first item is the consent calendar, of which we have 6 items. So is there anyone that wants one of those items removed for discussion? And if not, can we have a motion, please?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Before we move, could we just have Keen talk on 6? I'd just be interested to hear at the state level on the JPA.
On item 6?
It
No.
looked like there's some modifications on
Okay.
what we understood it to be.
Is that item 6, Greg?
Item 6, yeah.
Okay.
Well, certainly. So, agenda item number 6 has these two components. One that Commissioner Murray's referencing is the quarterly Cal LAFCO report. In this quarterly report, they address the actions of the Cal LAFCO board at their January 29th, 30th meeting in Irvine. And one of the topics that was raised at the board meeting was the legislation that this commission has been interested in pursuing, which would be having joint power authorities begin to file their agreements and amendments, just as they already do with the Secretary of State, with their LAFCO. And the idea here is just simply better data for LAFCOs to make use of when we do our municipal service reviews and when Candace puts together our website of local agencies for resource for the public. So I attended the meeting in Irvine, and ultimately I'm pleased to note that the board did approve our request for legislation with one I would consider modest modification, and that is to tie it down to be explicit to cities and special districts. Now, there's some weeds in this that I'd be happy to go into, but essentially there was a concern that if we didn't narrow it down to cities and special districts, the reach of the legislation might be a little too much, whether it be Council of Governments or other types of joint power authorities that, like financing districts, that might be a little too much of an overload for LAFCO to process. That said, I'm working right now with both Assemblymember Levine and State Senator McGuire on hopefully getting some legislation introduced for the second year of the current session. So I will give a report probably at our next meeting on that process, yes.
So Keen, it actually reads public agencies, so it's further defined as cities and special districts rather than public agencies.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Been moved and second that we approve the consent calendar. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carried. Thank you. The next item is public hearing, and this is the interview for public members and possible appointment. I think we're close to 7:40. And so would you like to introduce this, King?
Yeah, I'll do a very quick summary on my end, but again, this hearing is for the city, county, and special district members of the commission to conduct interviews of candidates for the regular public member position on Marin LAFCO to a term that would begin, I believe, the first Monday of May. I think that is May 4th. And it would run for 4 years. And as we provided in our agenda report, we had 4 candidates that applied by our March 13th deadline. That number is now down to 3, with one of the candidates, Carla Overberger, withdrawing earlier today. That said, we do have the remaining 3 candidates in attendance this evening. We've roughly budgeted 15 to 20 minutes for individual interviews. We've prepared a list of preset questions for the members to ask. Now, certainly you can deviate and ask alternative questions. We'd only request that you stay consistent in asking the same questions to all 3 applicants. And of course, it's expected that individual follow-up with each candidate be allowed. That said, we have done, just for the benefit of helping move this along, put a predetermined order in place. So the first candidate would be Martha Turry, followed by Peter Banning, and then the incumbent Jeffrey Blanchfield. Just a couple more housekeeping items. Per practice, I believe that we would ask the 2 candidates that are not being interviewed to wait outside while the interviews are being taken place. Everyone else could stay. And then once you're done with the interviews, Vice Chair, We would ask that you formally open this up for public comment, if there's any, close the hearing, and then begin your deliberations with the one caveat that the legislature requires that any successful appointment get a vote from both a city, county, and special district member. So keep that in mind as you consider these actions. So with that, I'll turn it back to Vice Chair.
Thank you, Keen. So we're prepared to move forward. I'd like to open the public hearing and ask Martha to join us at the podium, if she would. Welcome, Martha. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, they left. I think. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Good evening.
Yep. Thank you. Carla, would you like to start off, please?
Okay, Martha, I'll start with the first question.
Certainly.
Would you please explain your interest in serving as a regular public member of Marin LAFCO and how it relates to your background and experience?
I'll do that. First, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I was raised in Washington, D.C. Both my parents are public servants. My mother worked at the National Institute of Health, and my father was an economic advisor to a few presidents and was the President Reagan's Undersecretary of Treasury. So public service is what I grew up with. I studied at Cornell. I came to California to do my master's in public policy. I went back to DC to work at EPA in the Office of Policy Analysis, but then I had to come home. I came back to California in '85. I worked at the National Marine Fisheries Service, studying the effects of crude oil on marine food chains. And my own specialty is water. So that's, and then I went to work for the State Public Utilities Commission in 2006, and I retired from there in 2013. I worked in the Office of the Consumer Protection and Safety Division. I was a regulatory analyst. Since 2013, when I retired, I've been the trustee of a local family trust. Now I'd like to tell you about my service in Marin County. I have worked I worked with the National Park Service on the Coho and Steelhead Restoration Project, counting coho and steelhead and their nests, their redds, in West County tributaries. I've served on the Miwok Archaeological Preserve of Marin Board of Directors. I've served, on the Fairfax Parks and Recreation Commission and on the Open Space Committee. And I volunteered with the Friends of Corte Madera Creek doing coliform counts in San Anselmo Creek. And now I want to tell you about my experience as a commissioner. I served as the governor's, as the public member of the governor's Abandoned Hazardous Waste Site Commission. I served on the East Bay Regional Park District Advisory Commission, on the Alameda County Fish and Game Commission, and, as I said, on the Fairfax Parks and Recreation Commission. Now, all of these commissions have quite different mandates. For example, the Governor's Commission on Abandoned Hazardous Waste Sites was tasked with identifying all the abandoned hazardous waste sites in the state and then prioritizing them for public safety and for cost of remuneration and advising the governor. The Fairfax Parks and Recreation Commission was responsible for management of the historic pavilion and recreation programs therein. The Alameda County Fish and Game Commission advised the county district attorney and the bench and bar on state resource code violations, and we worked on some budget for the state, for the sheriff's department and for county fish and game officers, and sometimes went out on patrol with them, which was exciting. But what they all had in common was a responsibility to advise on the basis of best practice and best information and data the organizations to which they are responsible, to work with sister organizations and to work with the public and with staff and with other commissioners in a collegial and well-informed fashion. I've been very lucky to be able to spend most of my career doing that, and I think what I've learned is that a collegial erudition and wonkery is necessary and valuable.
Thank you.
Martha, good evening. Could you describe what you believe to be the essential role of Marin LAFCO?
Well, under the existing law, my understanding is that Marin LAFCO, like all the other county LAFCOs, is responsible for applications to the commission having to do with changes in special districts and boundaries, and now recently each LAFCO has been tasked with an assessment of each county's water supplies. On top of that, of course, the LAFCOs are responsible for working with other agencies and determining the bright path for the future.
What is your understanding of the public member's function of Marin LAFCO?
My understanding is that the public member represents the public as opposed to the members who represent the county, the special districts, the city.
Thank you, Martha. Quite an interesting background you've had. I was intrigued with everything that you've done. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
What do you believe to be the key opportunities and challenges for this Marin LAFCO?
The challenges and the opportunities are, of course, inseparable. Right now we are facing, in this county, rising seas. The forecast is that the ocean will rise an additional 8 inches within the coming decade. It's already come up 4 inches since 1990 something. What that means within Marin County is that both on the bay side and on the coast side, we are going to be dealing with some serious impacts. For example, on the bay side, on Highway 101, the low spot at Lucky Drive is not going to get any higher. We may very well have to look at ways to either berm it or move it. Everything on that side is going to be impacted by rising water, saltwater intrusion. This is, of course, going to affect not only the transit corridor, but also our commercial corridor. We may have to look at serious changes in foundations, conduits for plumbing, electricity. On the coast side, we are going to be looking at, as on the bay side, we're going to be looking at unquestionable saltwater intrusion higher up in the freshwater zone, and the mixing zone will move further inland. On the bay side, that will probably have some impact on our migrating coho. On the coast side, we are going to be looking at saltwater intrusion into the groundwater level. It's going to affect fodder for our cattle and dairy industry. It may very well impact. We'll lose some wells. Some wells will be compromised by saltwater intrusion. We're probably going to be looking at the possibilities of shifting soils. We're going to need to work with a number of other agencies to address those parts of these problems that are specifically LAFCO's parts of the problem. You're welcome.
Thank you. Does anyone have a follow-up question that they'd like to ask? No? Do you have a question that you might want to ask us, or a statement that you'd like to make, sort of a finishing statement?
I defer to y'all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So the next interview is Peter Banning. Thank you, Candace. Welcome, Peter. Nice to see you again.
Thank you, Chair Rodoni.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
So you kind of know the ropes. There's a series of questions that we're going to ask you, and feel free to ask us questions at the end if you want to.
Okay, will do.
Carla, would you like to start?
Okay, Peter, can you share with us your interest in serving as a regular public member on LAFCO and how it relates to your background and experience?
Well, I'm recently retired. I would like to find ways to give some public service, and this would be a good one. And as far as the other part of the question is concerned, has everything to do with 30 years of my career. I began at Marin LAFCO. Well, it wasn't the beginning of my working life, but 30 years ago I was an intern for this organization, and it just kept going. So it has a nice feel of continuity to it that way, but more particularly, it would be a great thing to remain connected with the organization, but in a different way. And so in a different capacity as a commissioner, this would be a growth thing for me. It would be quite a different way of thinking about things that I've thought about for such a long time.
Peter, if you could describe what you believe to be the essential role of Marin LAFCO.
Well, the proposed role of LAFCO's overall is to try to make some sense out of the structure of local government. And it takes a couple of different forms. Your planning function in setting spheres of influence and periodically updating them is well, it serves a variety of purposes, not least of which are to inform the public of how things really work. You know, to the extent that they want to know, this is where the public comes to find out about how the pieces of local government fit together. And so that's something that I think that LAFCO is uniquely positioned to do. And the purpose, the other main function of LAFCO to process boundary proposals is something that you're not terribly busy with as a rule. I might not be quite up to date, but as far as, I'd be surprised if you were hearing more than a half a dozen boundary proposals a year. But the ones that you hear are important to the people that put them forward. And you got to do a good job with that. So.
Peter, what is your understanding of the public member's function on Marin LAFCO?
Well, the public member is the only member who is not a member of an appointing body, of another local government organization in Marin County. And so it's kind of the public member is a balance point, a person who is not completely caught up in the ebb and flow of local governments that happens when they come together in an intergovernmental function like this. And so, as a point of view, the public member provides this slightly external point of view to the other commissioners, and hopefully it informs your decisions in that way.
Okay, Peter, can you describe what you believe to be the key opportunities and challenges for Marin LAFCO?
I think the opportunity is to develop the Commission's role as the best informed source of information about local government in Marin County. It's like in the overall dimension, you guys should be the experts about how these pieces fit together. And so that's an opportunity that when I was on your staff, that I always tried to pursue, but I think it would be better pursued as a commissioner. Make some different demands on the staff. Other opportunities are, to expand and improve the municipal service review function. And again, I'm not quite up to date. I have not been reading Keene's reports as a retiree. I just haven't done that. But I would have expected that numerous improvements have already been made, because if you spend 10 years or so doing that stuff, then a fresh approach is always a good idea. Those would be toward the top of my list.
Thank you, Peter. Anyone have a follow-up question for Peter? Okay, do you have any questions for us or any statements you want to make, or?
There is something, actually. I asked myself if anybody would worry that I had been a staffer or that I was involved as a consultant with Napa LAFCO at the same time. And so I'd like to say a couple of things about that.
Yeah,
the first is that I'll be finished with Napa LAFCO in 1 to 2 months, and not to go back. I've done that quite enough. The second is that there's actually a precedent for this anyway, this sort of dual role thing. When I worked here as an intern, the executive officer's name was Warren Nelson, and he was a resident of Yountville in Napa County, and he was the mayor of Napa County. And he served, while he was your executive officer, he was mayor of Yountville and city member of LAFCO in Napa County, and actually conducted quite a distinguished career for himself as a LAFCO person for more than 10 years, I think. So I would hope that I would do as well as he did. But that's
thank
all I
you.
have to.
Thank you for that comment. I appreciate that. Yeah. I think that's it then, Peter.
Okay.
So the next person is Jeffrey Blanchfield. Welcome, Jeffrey. Nice. You didn't eat all the cake, did you?
No, but it's attracted a few people.
So
Sure.
you kind of know the ropes. You've been through this a few times already, and so we have a series of questions we're going to ask you, and then you have an opportunity at the end for you to ask us a question or make a statement if you like.
Okay, I appreciate that very much, Dennis. Thank you.
Carla?
Okay. Jeff, please explain.
Don't forget to push the green button.
Pushing. Okay, if you would please explain your interest in serving as a regular public member on Marin LAFCO and how it relates to your background.
Okay. If I can reverse that, I would like to do that because my background sort of affects my interests. Educationally, I have a master's degree in city and regional planning, which got me interested in this field in the first place. And I have worked for local government, cities, state government, and special regional governments in my career. And the last portion of my career, which was most of it, was as the Chief Planning Officer of the San Francisco Bay Conservation and Development Commission. And that commission I felt was rather unique in its governance makeup, which I felt was extremely important in a democratic system of government. It had representatives from each one of the counties, representatives from the city, state agency heads, federal agency heads, and so it provided an opportunity, a melding of ideas and viewpoints that come together to solve particular issues and problems. And when I looked at LAFCO as an institution, I saw the same thing. I saw county representatives, special district representatives, city representatives, and the public. And it seemed to me that this scale of operation and this representation was really an ideal way to look at the issues that are set before LAFCO by the legislature. Particularly where growth ought to occur, where's the appropriate place for it, how we protect our natural resources, primarily agriculture and wildlands in Marin, and the efficiency, how you get both economic and governmental efficiency out of institutions, and having viewpoints from the various sectors of government I think is extremely helpful, and I think it's borne itself out in the activities of this commission. So that's why I was interested in LAFCO and why I would like to continue in this work, because I am, again, very attracted to how this institution of government works.
Thank you.
Jeff, you've already answered this to some extent, but describe what you believe to be the essential role of Marin LAFCO.
Well, I think the essential role, of course, is to carry out the law. It doesn't have any authority not to do that. But I think one of the other roles of Marin LAFCO is to facilitate change. To facilitate change in the way of making governmental operations more efficient and effective, particularly looking at smaller organizations, which we have in Marin, that maybe could operate better with some assistance. And I give, by example, the Southern Marin Fire situation, where LAFCO was a facilitator of both the consolidation and annexation of other agencies into that fire district. Marin LAFCO assisted that process. They didn't take it over, they assisted it. They were an expert on tap rather than on top. And I think that that is a essential role for LAFCO. I think it's set up to do that well. I think this agency has done it, and I think it can do it in other places. We learned something from the Southern Marin wastewater district potential consolidation that I think helps guide us as to what the best role this LAFCO has in looking for a way to come up with more efficient government, and that is as an educator and an assistor, and a collaborator.
Jeff, what is your understanding of the public member's function on Marin LAFCO?
Well, I think the public member really does serve the general public. I mean, you come without portfolio. You don't represent a city or a special district or the county. And even though the law says you check in your city, county, or special district hat at the door when you walk in and put on your LAFCO hat, it's very hard to do that. The public member doesn't have that baggage, frankly. And I think that the public member comes in and really has a responsibility to have a feel for what's happening in the county as a whole, but to do it more in a holistic view. And to me, that is one of the primary responsibilities. The other responsibility I found out is defaulted over time is you become chair. And it is often, I think, because others may not wish to do it, but it's looked at as kind of a neutral position that somebody isn't pushing an agenda. And I think it's wise to be aware of that and truly be someone who feels that they do represent the county as a whole.
My question, Jeff, is what do you believe to be the key opportunities and challenges for this Marin LAFCO?
I believe we have some key problems and opportunities in the world of climate change. Just reading the last few days through our water study on both North Marin and Marin municipal water districts, give you a feel that when there is drought conditions, and we use 76, 77 as the worst case example, I would submit it's not the worst case. The worst case may be ahead of us, but I think that is one of the things that LAFCO has to address and is uniquely poised to address in the county by bringing this up. I think climate change also affects sea level rise, which affects flooding issues in the cities and counties and in areas of special districts. But there doesn't appear to me to be an institution that's saying, let's look at this from a region county-wide basis, which you must. It's incremental. And I think that there is a great opportunity for LAFCO to address climate change, working collaboratively with the other institutions so that we really have a thrust in that direction. I think there are other opportunities in providing for more cost-effective and efficient governmental institutions, like my example with the Southern Marin Fire. We see with the Central Marin Policing. We will probably see with other institutions. So I think there is a great opportunity there for cost-effective government. And again, I think LAFCO's role is being a partner in that process, not an instigator of it.
Thank you, Jeff. Opportunity for follow-up questions? Okay, seeing none, would you like to ask us the question or make a statement?
Well, I would like to say what I consider a very important thing. I've been on LAFCO a long time. I may not have reached 98 meetings, but I've been on LAFCO a long time. And I really believe it's important to keep new thoughts coming in. And I really had planned on making this my last term. But I was one-upped by the vice chairman who stated it very early on. And I also recognize that we have a relatively new commission. We have at least 3 relatively new members on board. We have a very ambitious work program that extends out 5 years. We have tackled our policies, procedures, and guidelines. And there is one particular chapter that I'm responsible for that I haven't delivered on. And we just had dropped in our lap the problem of our retiree medical benefits not working the way we thought they were going to. And we have 1 3/4 staff. And I think that the commissioners who are working on matters are going to have to keep doing that. And so in my mind, there's a lot of work to be done, that should be done. I'm thinking of, if you should decide that you would want to reappoint me, that this would be a transition period for me and for the issues before us. And that in the next 6 months, at the end of next year, we should have accomplished our policy revisions. We should be well on the track of coming up with how we handle our retiree medical benefits and other benefits. And we should have a commission that has now been through a number of meetings. And so if I were to resign at the end of the year, should I be appointed, the commission really has 3 options. One, it can appoint the alternate public member to step in and take the public member's position. Or it can draw on applicants that have applied to the commission and that they have interviewed over the last 12 months. Or they could just start the whole process over again, which doesn't seem to me to be very efficient. So it seems to me that there are some good choices for the commission out there. If the commission were to ask me to continue, I'm just saying that I think after 6 months, it is time for somebody new to come in. Hopefully I will have met the goal of 98 meetings by that time. But I would be thinking to resign at that point. So that's what I wanted to discuss with you, and it's important for you to know my thinking there and why I've come up to this conclusion.
Thank you, Jeff, for being so candid. I think that's important for us to hear that, and I appreciate it. So I think there's no further questions. We're going to open the public hearing as soon as you walk out the door and see if any of the audience would like to comment, and then we'll proceed from there.
Okay, and I'll let you know whether the cake's still there. Okay. There were some takers out there.
Thank you. Yeah.
How long is the term for?
Term would be for 4 years, beginning, again, I wish I thought I had written it down, the first Monday of May.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us again. This is a public hearing. This is an opportunity for anyone in the audience, including the alternate members, to make a comment if they'd like to about the candidates or about the process or anything they'd like to suggest at this point before we close the public hearing and come back to the commission. Would anyone like to make a comment? Okay. So seeing no one wanting to make a comment, I'd like to have a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Been moved and second. We close the public hearing, and now it's the commission's wish to deliberate. It does take a unanimous vote tonight, I believe, to elect someone or select someone, because it takes one entity from each of our supporters, the city, county, and special districts. So actually, there's 2 special districts, so it doesn't take unanimous.
Yeah,
It's
near unanimous.
near unanimous. So what would the commission like to do? Comments from the commission? Motion from the commission?
Well, all I can say is I wish that it was an easier decision.
Yeah, I can start, I guess. First of all, I want to thank all 3 applicants for applying. Outstanding applications, great job in your interviews. Yet again, I'm reminded that here in Marin County, we really are blessed with a very talented public that is willing to step up and serve the community, again, reflected by the fact that you took the time to apply and was very impressed to hear all of your backgrounds. Martha, your breadth of experience, very stellar. The fact that you've stepped up to serve in a number of different capacities, including here locally. Very much appreciated hearing about that. Peter, obviously you have a great wealth of knowledge, particularly in the area of LAFCOs, with your virtually entire career devoted to the field. I think that gives you a very unique perspective. I was a little bit concerned about kind of the issue of, that you're currently serving, at least in a consulting role, but you did address that for us, so I appreciate that. And then Jeff, was very impressed with your answers. As you pointed out, I think we are in an interesting time period for the agency right now with a number of new faces, including my own, here on the panel. I think having you on the board as a public member has brought a good balance of kind of consistency, yet, as you again reiterated this evening, your willingness to look at change and how to move the organization forward. You were candid with us that it looks like you have your own succession plan in place. I certainly would look to you to at least possibly extend that to 1 year of further service, if that was possible. Again, as Carla mentioned, in a very difficult choice situation, I would be leaning to continue to have Jeff in this role, and again, thank the other applicants at this time, and hopefully have them continue to express an interest down the road.
Thank you. Greg?
So, Damon captured a lot of similar comments that I'd have as well. Very well qualified candidates. Martha, wide breadth. A lot of this information is on LAFCO's website in terms of our function and things, so just anyone else looking to go through this process, I'd recommend going to the website and kind of informing yourself as you come in. Particularly, some of our questions are pretty straightforward. You might want to go to the tape and look at the other candidates' presentations as well. And certainly encourage all to serve in a public service capacity, and I want to thank all the candidates. But that just one of my observations in terms of comparing what was presented tonight, and us as board members, we have to look at what was presented, even though we may have no candidates in their backgrounds. Peter Banning, a tremendous experience in Marin and working with LAFCO, and myself personally, a lot of confidence in Peter that he could certainly fulfill this role. However, I think Jeff Blanchfield thoroughly vetted the questions and provided very strong responses, and I also agree would probably be best candidate, even though he has a short-term succession plan. I think would be best served for Marin LAFCO at this time. However, Peter, I don't want to dissuade you. I think as we transition and you transition out of the consultant role and look to get more on this side, certainly encourage you to continue. But those are my initial thoughts, and I want to thank again all the candidates for this, going through this process.
I concur with my fellow commissioners. It isn't always when you see 3 applicants that are so incredibly qualified and that would, I know, serve the commission and the public so well. I do feel, though, that with some of the things we were doing, that for Jeff to leave the helm right now in midstream would not be very timely. And I would certainly appreciate if he would consider it for 1 year. That I think that would really work out very well for the commission.
Okay, thank you, Carla. I concur with my fellow commissioners. I think we're very lucky to have 3 talented and qualified candidates. But Jeff has some unfinished business on this commission. I may have left him in a little more awkward position than I intended, but I know he has the policy things that he wants to finish. And I hope that Peter and Martha, you stay connected and come to LAFCO and visit us again at our commission meetings. I can remember David Ware invited me 14 plus years ago to come to LAFCO as a special district member to just visit LAFCO, and he was the special district member and chair at that time. And I didn't have a clue what LAFCO was, and it took me a long, long time to get up to speed. So I was impressed with the candidates today, how much up to speed they are with what LAFCO is about. So thank you, and again, I concur with the other members. I think that Jeff, it's almost out of necessity to speak, Jeff, that we need you to be here, and I agree with your observations about what things you need to finish. So would someone like to make a motion?
I'll move
I'll second the motion.
This is to,
for the appointment of Jeffrey Blanchfield, reappointment as the public member.
okay, so we have a motion and a second to reappoint Jeffrey Blanchfield as the public member. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, oppose? Thank you. Mr. Blanchfield, you could join us again, please? And thanks again, Peter and Martha, for your interest.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I too want to echo what I think one hears at various meetings you go to about how Marin really has a lock on some of the finest people in the state of California, and I was very fortunate to have the two other applicants in this process. I think that it indicates to the commission that there are people who are interested in what we're doing, and we can get the very best to apply here. So I want to thank you very much, and also say it's always been for me a real pleasure to be able to work with the kind of caliber of people that come on this commission. So thank you very much. And I also wanted to report that the cake is now completely gone out there. Okay. Let me get my sea legs under me.
Surprised you're just not out there right now. Yeah.
Okay, the public hearing item number 8 is the adoption of the proposed work plan and budget for the upcoming fiscal year. And this I know has gone through the committee, but Keen, you're going to present.
Yes, I will
material for us?
walk this item for the commission. So, as mentioned, this public hearing is for the commission to really take the first of what will ultimately be 2 steps in formalizing a game plan for the upcoming 2015-16 fiscal year. And this means this evening we are bringing to you for your adoption a draft resolution that has 2 key parts to it. One, it includes a proposed work plan that outlines the various special projects that the commission would endeavor to pursue this fiscal year or upcoming fiscal year. And then second, an operating budget that would, of course, put the resources to accomplishing those goals as well as just simply the day-to-day activities of the agency. So with that in mind, the very first item, again, the proposed work plan, draws on your recently updated strategic plan, as well as some observations by staff, and again, kind of categorizes your activities into these 3 main competency areas, right? Your planning, regulatory, and administrative duties. And given projecting out your regulatory activities and projects is a bit difficult, given they are largely driven by applicants, the proposed work plan that we've brought back to you today once again is heavy on planning and administrative projects. In fact, there are about 20 just in those 2 categories alone, and this certainly helps to highlight why there are a number of studies that we've included that are probably going to take up the bulk of our time, and that includes hopefully completing the water study as well as diving into 2 brand new studies that we have in and around San Rafael and Ross Valley. And you can see the actual work plan itself if you open up and go to attachment 1, your draft resolution, and then you look at Exhibit A, you'll see the work plan, and again, divided between these 3 areas, planning, administrative, and regulatory. And keep in mind, one of the things you want to scrutinize a bit is staff has attempted to put some priority to these projects. So not only are you looking at the work plan as a whole, but also the timing and the weight of some of these projects. And if you keep going through the resolution, you will land on Exhibit B. And Exhibit B is the proposed operating budget for 15-16. And this is a document that has been prepared by your appointed budget committee and ultimately, lands on a recommendation to up the ante, if you will, and invest some sizable additional resources in Marin LAFCO's organizational capacity by, among other things, providing funding for a full-time analyst. And it is the funds for the full-time analysts that is driving the bottom line number to go up from $374,000 this year to a proposed $464,000 next year, and that is a difference of 24%. Now, certainly that is a big difference for 1 year, but one that the Budget Committee has certainly given a lot of thought to and is ultimately premised okay, on the idea of being able to continue to proactively address our growing study mandates in-house through the cost certainties and controls therein of having an analyst do it, rather than perhaps the variables that are tied to going down the path of using outside consultants. So that at its core is where this recommendation is coming from. I will add, just for context, and now I'm going to be referencing the very last attachment to the staff report, it's attachment 4, that even with the proposed 24% increase in Marin LAFCO's operating expenses, you would still find yourself at the very low end of what the other 8 barrier LAFCOs are at in terms of budget. And that is despite the fact that with 65 governmental agencies under your direct purview, only Contra Costa has more agencies that it needs to oversee and prepare these studies for than Marin LAFCO. So my comment here is, even with the increase, we're still a lean budget. We're just wouldn't be as lean as we are right now. And again, it would be predicated on improving our internal capacities. Now, in terms of implementation, the Budget Committee did give a lot of thought to how this number would be passed on to our 42 funding agencies, right? You know, a third goes to the county, a third goes to the cities, and a third goes to the cities, special districts, county. And one of the benefits of the last few years is we've been able to increase our fund reserve. And so the committee proposes taking essentially a $50,000 credit out of our reserves this year and applying it into 15-16 to help ease this cost increase over 2 years. So rather than the county, the cities, and the districts seeing a 24% increase all at once in 15-16, they'd see about an 11.5% increase in 15-16, and then probably another 11.5% increase in 16-17. And I did talk and convey this budget, or at least this proposed budget, to the county, city, and many of the special district managers. And we haven't got any pushback yet. The reality is we are going to, assuming you approve this, send this out for a 60-day review. It's possible we may get some comments or pushback, but I think as of date, I think the agencies see where we're going with this. And again, I'm at least pleased that the initial reaction has been, you know, a mild understanding. There's one other comment I just want to provide before turning this back to the Budget Committee members if they'd like to provide some further input. Budgeting the funds for the analysts does not in and of itself greenlight your staff to go ahead and post and hire an analyst. Because we are still, you know, a relatively young agency on our own, there's a lot of details that would need to be done. For example, we ultimately would have to come back to you for your approval on a job class, pay, and any employment terms that you would want that position to have. This would simply provide the funding for the commission to be able to green light that decision if that decision down the road is, yes, let's go forward and get an analyst in here. So there is some time to debate the ins and outs. So with that, again, I would defer to the other 2 committee members who are in attendance this evening, and then ultimately, Chair, we are looking for adoption of the draft resolution with any desired changes before we come back to you for final action in June. Thank you.
Keen, thank you very much. Anyone on the Budget Committee wish to speak on this matter at this point? Carla or Dennis?
I would just mainly say that that staff has undertaken a huge workload, and that I don't think that the increase should anyone find objectionable, because I think it's entirely appropriate for staff to be able to work efficiently and keep this study going, that we provide for this opportunity. And I know that I mentioned this to our council, that we may see a rise in the fees. And nobody objected to it at all, because what they're providing is serving everyone.
Thank you. Dennis?
Yes, just a quick comment. We felt that the 24% was excessive at this point. Everyone's recovering from a recession and just building their reserves. And we felt comfortable that using our own reserves to supplement that would be okay, because we've actually exceeded our goal of how much reserve we need to have. So from those two perspectives. And then lastly, we also felt that the intern or the person we may hire won't be started day one or even maybe month one. So we may not expend that whole amount this year anyway. So it may end up coming back to reserves at some point, or a portion of it. So we felt pretty comfortable with the budget. It is a big leap. It's the first time in the long time that we've taken such a jump. But we're confident that this will work out and that we have a big work plan to achieve, so.
Good. I mean, what it says is that what we, in our strategic planning retreat, when we laid out a work program, we said, yes, this is what we want to do. Yes, this is what the law requires. We're also willing to say, and we're going to take some pain for increasing our budget to do that. But it's reasonable. And I think you've come up with a good idea on to make this a little bit more palatable to the funding agencies. And it shows some good creative thought. Yes, Craig.
Just point of clarification, I'm not on the budget committee, but and perhaps you've discussed this pretty thoroughly, but Keen, it's very interesting when you mentioned that Marin is number 2 in terms of number of districts to agencies to be reviewed. So is that of the total 58 in the state of California, or is just within a region?
Just within the Bay Area.
Okay.
The other thing, Keeney, you pointed out to the hiring, we are now, again, we keep saying reinventing the agency, and we will have to come up with, the appropriate benefits, all those things that you rely on a human resources department to take care of, except you don't have one. And so we're going to have to spend some time putting something together, and that takes staff time.
Yeah.
And so that and some other things that have come down takes a great deal of staff time. And I believe we really need someone to work on the municipal service reviews, or we're just not going to get them done.
And Chair, I forgot to mention, just for the benefit of context, the way we budgeted the analyst position just for the purposes of bringing you something today is we took a comparable position with the County of Marin, an administrative analyst, and we used their specs and incorporated it in to here. But again, because this would be your employee, the commission ultimately is going to have final say in, everything from pay to benefits to hours. And so that's a conversation to be had.
Okay, so you will be coming back to the commission and saying, here's sort of the classification that we would expect and name, and it would have these kind of benefits, these kind of hours, and it would address the whole pension issue.
Yes, so it would, and I'm going to use the policy committee as the initial vetting machine. I'll take to the policy committee some initial recommendations based on comparable, not only LAFCOs, but other smaller special districts and agencies. And ultimately, I think if we do this right, the commission will have, 2 to 3 solid alternative staffing arrangements for an analyst position that will have variances in pension pay, at will versus not at will, things of that nature.
Okay. This is scheduled for a public hearing, which we're going to have, but I wanted to get out the information and the committee's viewpoints on it before we open up the hearing so that members of the public have a good information base to comment on. So I'm going to open the public hearing on the proposed work program and budget for fiscal year 2015-16. And I have no cards. If there's anybody interested in addressing the commission on this matter, please come forward and give us your comments. and if you wish your name and organization you may be representing. Okay, I don't see a stampede to the podium there, so I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second to close the public hearing. All commissioners in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any commissioner opposed? Any commissioner abstaining? The public hearing is closed. So we have the staff proposal before us, which is to adopt Resolution 1503, which is attached to the staff report, which includes Exhibit A, the proposed work plan, and Exhibit B, which is the budget. And then we also have, and I'm going to lay out these three proposed actions so we might be able to vote on them at one time instead of separately. If we approve the work plan and the budget as laid out in Resolution 1503, then the executive officer would submit the proposed work plan and budget for review by the funding agencies and the general public. And then the committee would return with a final work plan and budget after we get comments as part of our regularly scheduled June 11th, 2015 meeting, which would also be at a public hearing. So if I can get, first of all, any commissioners have any comments on that? If not, move directly to a motion to approve the three steps I've outlined there. I would appreciate it.
I'd move alternate action 1 as just mentioned by our chair.
Okay,
Second.
second by Conley, motion by Murray. Okay. All commissioners in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any commissioner opposed? Any commissioner wish to abstain? The motion passes, and we will proceed on this matter. And thank you,
Thank you.
committee and staff, for moving through on this. Okay. We'll now move to the next public hearing, which is the countywide water municipal service review. These two reviews focus on the East Marin service by two agencies, the North Marin Water District and the Marin Municipal Water District. And what the staff has recommended is that they will do their presentation. We'll then open the hearing after the commissioners have an opportunity to question the executive officer regarding his presentation. Then we'll open the public hearing for commissioner comments, but we'll keep the hearing open.
Yes.
And we'll keep the hearing open to a special scheduled meeting on May 14th, here in these chambers at 7 o'clock. So, Keen.
Well, very quickly, as mentioned, Chair, staff had originally scheduled this hearing for the commission to receive draft agency profiles prepared as part of LAFCO's ongoing phased rollout of its countywide municipal service review on water service. The profiles that we did bring to you this evening are, as mentioned, on Marin Municipal Water District and North Marin Water District. And of course, you know, just for the benefit of reminder, the purpose of this entire study and this endeavor is for the commission to check in through its own independent lens on the supply and demand relationship on water service through specifically the various growth management issues that the legislature asks you to weigh in on a periodic basis. Now, in getting this document out the door, staff belatedly realized, boy, we did a whole lot of work, and we're not giving the commission or the public a whole lot of time to review this. So we're asking that the commission, again, simply open the hearing as we had provided in our notice. If there's any initial comments that anyone from the audience would like to make, to take that testimony, and then simply continue this item as a whole to, again, the special meeting on May 14th. And that time, staff will give a more detailed review and summary, and then hopefully get some feedback from the commission on next steps. Thank you.
Okay, so you were looking for some initial reaction from the commission. We opened the public hearing, some initial reaction from members of the public on the document, with the understanding at the next meeting, we'll have a more full explanation of the report and its ramifications, and we'll have a more full response from the commissioners and the public.
And again, initial is probably the right word, but if everyone wants to just hold and wait till the 14th, that's fine as well.
Okay, I will say this, I found this an amazing amount of information. And I also found I learned an awful lot. And I also found that the information in here begins to, I think, drive some of the looking at how we can do our jobs better, whichever organization is being looked at. And I think that was one of the intents of the legislature in giving this to LAFCO, is saying we need someone to daylight operations and opportunities that are often overlooked in the day-to-day work that organizations have. And the other thing that really hit me is the drought is serious. We're going to be stressed. And when we look back at all the agencies that provide water, and we look back at the baseline for drought of 76, 77, it's a big deal. And it's liable to get even bigger. So this is something to really focus in on and read carefully. Any commissioner have any comments at this time, or do you want to wait for your comments at our next meeting?
I'll
Yes.
move to continue.
Oh, okay. I'm going to open the hearing first, Commissioner Condon, but we'll come back for that motion. Craig, you had a comment?
Well, just a few initial general
Yeah,
comments,
yeah.
and perhaps they could be folded in between now and then. The green little bubbles throughout the documents, they may be a little difficult to read. I don't know if you could just change that style, perhaps like a cross-hatching or something that might copy well to the, it's helpful and really lively to see all the colors, but a lot of public agencies don't want to copy all these color copies, so however best you could do that. One of the things I've mentioned many times before is to emphasize the watersheds in Marin. So if you go to marinwatersheds.org, and particularly Novato, there of the 14 in Marin, eight of those 14 are within Novato's. So that'd be nice to talk about. And as our chair just mentioned, recycled water, it'd be interesting to emphasize that on 6.1 under service overview. There is a little discussion there about the MMWD system, so perhaps a little more emphasis on that, and I could provide Keen some other resources to take a look at. So, thank you.
Okay, if I could just pick up on the, I don't know what to call them, the green things.
The paragraph inserts.
The paragraph inserts. I found the language very helpful. To me, it was a good summary of kind of findings of what you have in there, and I found that, maybe in a final document, pulling those out, because you just hit the major points as you go through there, and it's, to me, they're findings very helpful. The color aside, of course. Okay, any other comments from the commission before I open the public hearing, and we hear from them, and then we'll hear from Carla.
I apologize that I had to step out for a minute. So just so I'm clear on this, it looks like the recommendation, though, is to advance this to a subsequent hearing
Yes.
for more in-depth consideration.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think this is the delivery meeting. Here it is. Here it is, take it up at the next meeting.
There you go. All right.
Okay. I'm going to open the public hearing now, opportunity for some initial thoughts and comments on the municipal service review for the two water districts. Thank you. Please come forward, and if you wish, state your name and who you represent, but we won't hold you to it.
My name is Chris DeGabriel. I'm the general manager of the North Marin Water District. Two of my bosses are on your commission. I did have an opportunity, our staff, to review the administrative draft that Keene provided us about a month ago, and we provided extensive comments to Keene on that administrative draft. We haven't had the opportunity to go back and review again, but it certainly is comprehensive, and it is a complicated topic with a lot of interacting parts, a lot of cooperative agencies that we work with, and a lot of regulatory burden that we must deal with as well. So extending the public hearing until May 14th is appreciated, so we can do our full diligence to review it in full. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your assistance and your interest. Yes, Scott.
Scott McConnell, League of Women Voters. TMI, there's a lot of information and it's great. It really is well done. But when it comes out to the public, I have a question basically. Will the commissioners or will the LAFCO be making any policy recommendations related to the findings, or is this just going to come out and with a flood of information, which I am sure the public won't fully absorb?
Good point, good question. Keene, of course, you have an response
Yes,
to
so,
that.
and that is an outstanding question. Right now, this is a data-driven exercise. When we get to presenting a final report for first reading, probably in August, there are going to be two narrative elements for the public's benefit. One, a narrative-friendly executive summary. These are the things that Marin LAFCO sees as the pertinent relationship between supply, demand, and growth through our mission by way of the legislature. And then secondly, and this goes directly to the speaker's comment about recommendations, you don't have a choice. The legislature tells you you need to adopt written determinations on a range of service and governance factors, notably what you believe to be the infrastructure needs or deficiencies for not only individual agencies, but as the aggregate, the water system as a whole, your own growth in population projections, your own conclusions on financial solvency, and your own conclusions and possibly recommendations on, is the governance setup appropriate? Are there areas that need to be looked at? Are there areas we want to look at right now? So yes, so the response is yes, there's going to be recommendations, and there's going to be an effort to kind of explain our story. Right now, we're just at the data collection phase.
Okay, very helpful. Scott, does that respond to your thank you very much. Any other comments? Commissioner Burdick.
Like the chair, I thought it was really fun and interesting reading, and reminds you how historical and interested and convoluted water, the delivery of water is in the state. I was curious as to, I mean, if we're going to finally really consider this in August, we're going to be even lower on water in August right now. What are we doing to reach out to the media, the IJ, and folks like that, and say, hey, we're doing this now, and we've got this, like, is this draft up on our website? I don't know, do they have an environmental or municipal reporter or somebody call and say, would you like us to keep updating you on this stuff? Because I think if there's one thing we ought to be able to get more than 4 people to show up to a meeting to in August would be water.
Thank you. Good point. Good point. Thanks, Chris. Okay, any other comments from commissioners or the public before Carla, did you want to move that we continue?
Sure, I'll move to continue the countywide water municipal service review until May 14th.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any commissioner opposed? Any commissioner abstaining? We will continue the hearing rather until our next special scheduled meeting, which will be the 14th of May. Okay. Move to item number 10, and this is a report from the Policy Committee reporting back to the Commission from the direction they received from the Commission last time to look at certain matters that were in the Chapter 1, 2, and 3 of the proposed new handbook that we reviewed at the last meeting. And what we did is take and tentatively adopt those 3 chapters, put them up on the shelf so we could proceed through the other 3 chapters and make a whole out of it. But the commission specifically said, we're putting this up on the shelf, but for these 4 matters, the per diem stipends reimbursement issue, the fraud prevention, wanted to see some language on that, some more description and sort of comparison of the Rosenberg Rules of Order versus Robert's Rules of Order, and also a response from the direction that the committee and the staff received is to find out a little bit more about what we understood the county's position, county executive officers or administrative officers' position was on Marin LAFCO becoming part of the pre-funding contract the county has with CalPERS, so we could continue, which we thought was in operation, the Marin LAFCO pre-funding retiree medical benefit coverage, which the policy committee and the staff spent a couple of years working with the County Human Resources Department and the Marin County Retirement Board about. And if you'll recall, we were led to believe that the county now felt that it would be inappropriate for Marin LAFCO to be in that situation. So we wrote a letter to Mr. Matthew Heimel, who is the county administrative officer, asking him about the status of LAFCO's participation in the county's benefit trust contract with CalPERS to pre-fund the agency's retirement medical benefits. And you have that letter, should have that letter, should have been.
Everyone should have 2 letters on the dais that Candace made copies of. One was Chairman Blanchfield's February 17th letter to the county, and then Mr. Heimel's letter from the county to LAFCO. It's not dated, but it's the one with the county letterhead.
Right. And so basically, what Mr. Heimel said is that it would be very difficult for the county to include Marin LAFCO in its contract, and that the LAFCO should look for a different alternative. And one of the things when we were discussing this with the county and MSERA back a few years ago was there really seemed to be 2 possible avenues for LAFCO to follow in setting up its retiree benefits. One is to be part of the MSERA and the county process, which was our preference, or to go directly to CalPERS and see if we could do it there, not knowing what that entailed. And so what the commission at that time said, well, pursue both, or at least pursue the count with the county, because that seems the best option. And so we've done that, and at least I think in our judgment, the door is pretty well closed, and we understand why. And Mr. Heimel gave good reasons for that, and I think we honor that. So what we're looking for is authorization for the commission to keep searching, if you will, and to report back to the commission with our recommendation on alternatives. The primary one at this point being a relationship with CalPERS. So that's kind of where we are, and I'll take it as the commission's consensus is to keep looking and get back to us. Hopefully, we will have something in the next few months to share with you. Chris, any thoughts, or Jack, that you may have on this? Chris did a lot of work the first time around, and
Well, it was disappointing, for sure. And we're going to have to figure out some other way of solving this problem. I'm going to get in touch with Marilyn Oliver. That's the actuary we consulted with and retained to get us to the point where we thought we had this solved. She's also the actuary for MSERA. And she's an extremely knowledgeable person. I'm simply going to ask her, I'm going to send her the stuff and say, have you got any bright ideas, Marilyn, other than us going directly to CalPERS and asking if there's some way we can enter into a direct relationship with CalPERS? If I was CalPERS, I wouldn't be wildly enthusiastic about entering into a contract with a 1.75 FTE public agency and adding to their administrative load. But, the government code right there in 20,004 talks about CalPERS' obligation to help local agencies solve their pension problems. So, but I'm going to talk to her and see if she has any suggestions other than that. And if she does, policy committee will kick them around and report back to you.
yes, Craig?
Chris, have you seen any other LAFCO struggling with the same situation? So it's kind of this quasi-county group, and
No, this is
how do you receive the benefits?
This funding problem for retiree health care wasn't an issue on anybody's radar even 7-8 years ago. People were starting to worry about how well funded is our retirement system after the big stock market crash and rates of contribution employer normal rate going way up. And then it's only been the last couple of years people went, wow, if our pensions are underfunded, because everybody's been paying into their retirement plan, nobody's been paying into anything to fund retiree health care. And the actuaries, and as a result of GASB, we have to start reporting this stuff as an obligation. So the answer to your question, Craig, is no. I haven't seen this problem with a LAFCO, because I don't talk to other LAFCOs, and I suppose Keene can yak to a couple of his compatriots. San Diego's problem, I'm sure they're out with their retirement board, because they got 20 employees or something like that. It's a big outfit. LA County probably the same thing. Smaller ones, I don't know what Nevada County LAFCO is doing, or Placer County, or those things. Keene could make a couple calls and find out.
I don't know if there's a share program where, throughout Cal LAFCO, you could send out a ping and say, hey, this is what we're struggling with. Has anyone else dealt with this? And
that's why I want to ask Ms. Oliver. If anybody's going to know that right off the top of her head almost instantaneously, it's going to be her. This is how she makes her living. She deals with these people and determines, runs their numbers and tells them what they have to pay. So, and she's extremely smart and been doing this forever. And she and I know all the same dead actuaries, so and she and I talk on the same level. So
You travel in pretty racy groups there, if
hey,
you know all these actuaries.
When I went to work with my father when I was 26 years old, he got me involved in the Oakland Police and Fire Retirement System as one of the first things I did before I was even sworn in. And that system was underfunded to the tune of $34 million in 1968. And that was real money. And I got to meet all the actuaries from Coates, Herforth, and England who had the throttle hold on the whole public sector actuary.
Okay, but we were looking for your blessing to continue this work, and I think we have it, and we'll continue to do that. Then there are 4 other items. What we're going to do is, as I said, the 4 items that the commission asked us to take another look at in chapters 1, 2, and 3, I'm going to roughly explain what the committee has done, and then we're going to go to chapter 4, which is the new chapter that deals with regulations that Keen will make a presentation on. So the first one that you asked us to look at was the per diem and the stipends and reimbursement issue, and that you will find on page 22 of the new handbook with the lovely logo on the front. It resembles a cake. And on page 22, at the top, it's commissioner compensation. And in this, we have arrived at just one term. Instead of per diem or stipends, they're going to be stipends for any regular or special meeting of the commission. So what that does is address the special meetings such as your May 14th meeting or your strategic planning. I had it on the tip of my thumb. Thank you. See, that's why I miss Dennis. These little things. Strategic planning. So, I mean, that's clarified, and that was one of the issues he had last time. And each day, if you go down to the bullet underline, the stipends will be provided in the following cases in lieu of claiming reimbursements for the actual expenses, so that each day of attendance at a standing or ad hoc meeting of the commission, which is regular or special meeting of the commission. Then on expense reimbursements, the commission will receive reimbursements for reasonable and necessary expenses incurred in attendance of a commission meeting or performance of other official commission business. I suppose if you were asked to go speak to somebody, some organization on LAFCO matters, that your expenses would be covered on that. And this would include attendance at Cal LAFCO conferences or training sessions. Now, the importance here is you don't get a stipend for going to the conferences, but your expenses will be reimbursed. And that's what the commission talked about last time. So that's the language we put in here. And we also put in then on the next paragraph the procedures by which you submit and what you submit for your expense claims. So that was how we addressed the stipend, per diem, and reimbursements. And I think it's fairly straightforward. Hopefully you will agree with that.
One question I had is it says commissioners shall not receive more than 5 stipends per month. I mean, is there a scenario where you would actually receive up to 5 stipends per month? That seems rather high to me.
There's certainly a scenario if you had multiple committee meetings and more than one commission meeting. So there's a scenario out there. It's high. It's a high
Kind of
ceiling.
inviting abuse, in my humble opinion. I would cut that down to like 3.
That's fair. We were trying to be cognizant of some stretching of reimbursements by other institutions in the county and in the state too. And three would seem fine with me too.
Okay.
Let me see if there are any commissioners that don't agree with that. Other than that, we'll take the consensus that three is a reasonable number.
Jeff, I just
Craig?
wonder if you need to qualify, so if you do go to like state conference and you also have two other meetings same time, you could get up to 5, just that one.
No, but
particular-
state conference would not be
Oh, is
covered by
that a
stipend.
separate aside? Okay,
Yeah.
that's fair enough, yeah.
That's normal reimbursement of mileage, et cetera.
Yeah. Okay.
Regular, special committee meeting.
So then, Damon, we were changing the language to read, commissioners shall not receive more than 3 stipends per month. That's on the last sentence in section or subsection A, stipends. Okay?
Thanks.
Okay. Let me move to fraud prevention, which is on page 32. It is page 32H, fraud prevention. So we've added that language. And, you know, part of the financial reporting above really also relates to fraud prevention because it sets up the process of our auditing, our reports on our monthly financial reports, and then specifically the fraud prevention language, which, Keen, correct me if I'm wrong, but this seemed to come from our auditors as a suggestion of language, or?
Well, so 2 things. So the auditor said, Marin LAFCO, you need to have 2 specific policies with regards to your financial reporting, fraud prevention being one, capital asset management. And then with respect to the actual language you're looking at under H, fraud prevention, this is born from Candace kind of synthesizing best practices amongst a lot of LAFCOs in the Bay Area. And we've kind of massaged language here and there, but this is kind of a template from others.
Good. So it's had the test of time and we stole it. Okay, good. Yes. And the capital asset management is on page 30, which is a couple of pages before 32. Number E, letter E, rather, capital asset management. So this is to follow and to be consistent with what our auditor recommended to us as best business practices to follow.
Absolutely. And so the discretion of the commission is, well, how do you want to define what a capital asset is for purposes of reporting and depreciation? So the committee talked about, there's a range from highs of 5,000 down to as low as 500. Given the size of our agency, the committee is recommending a $1,000 threshold. And so what does that mean for Marin LAFCO? Well, the reality is probably only a handful of items would then be considered a capital asset for us. Our copier, our server, probably our laptop. So again, it's still a relatively high number for us, but it's appropriate that these are the core items that if they walked away, it would be a problem for us.
Okay. Yes, Craig.
So Keen, just follow up on that, is there like a fixed asset inventory, or is that what's recommended? So now you need some sort of evaluation of this threshold?
Yeah, so the policy would direct
Fixed
us
assets
to
listed.
establish an inventory log, and then the log would be updated every year, probably presented to the commission for formal receive and file, just so you are aware and on the hook that, yes, you are aware that these are the assets of the agency as of X date.
So it occurs to me as we do these reforms, we're also taking on some additional work that had not been done before. For example, just reading below in the under subsection B, that the commission clerk has now some new responsibilities. Takes a little time, but these add up. Okay. Rosenberg. This is, you have a copy of Rosenberg's Rules of Order, and it is at the end of this section. And they have a term that I detest, a cheat sheet that explains in summary motions. What Rosenberg's Rules of Order, as we mentioned last time, were written by Judge Rosenberg. And Judge Rosenberg seems to have, and stays in Yolo County quite a bit, but he's been on, yeah, it's this, he's been on city councils, boards of supervisors. I'm sure he's been on a special district. He's taught law. He's been a judge. He's been in private practice. But he is the one that came up with the rules of order, because as he looked at all these governmental agencies, he said, really, what government needs to do is have an easily understood process to run meetings. Whereas if I can compare the two, Robert's Rules of Order, which are in this book from cover to cover, as compared to Rosenberg's. And Rosenberg said, you know, there's got to be a better way to do this for the average city council, planning commission, LAFCO board. And so he took and essentially digested the intent and the rules in Robert's Rules of Order into an easily understood way to run a meeting. And he must have been a chair or something at one time, because it's really guided towards how the chair can kind of quarterback the organization when you've got various motions coming in, various people wanting to speak. And so he has got a very simple way of doing it that has been blessed by the California League of Cities and is being adopted by many local governments throughout the state of California. In fact, Rosenberg is a circuit rider. He will go and does go to many organizations, such as Cal LAFCO conferences, and make presentation. But this is a really short, easily understood method to run the business of a small governmental agency, and one in which the public can understand what these guys are doing, and one that reminds you that the public needs to pay a very big, large process, part of the process of your meeting. And there is also an emphasis on courtesy and decorum, which in your policies indicate that is one of the primary responsibility of the chair, is to make sure that there's courtesy and decorum in our meetings. And I think we've been pretty darn successful in doing that. So what we have done, what the committee has done, is try to get to you just a simple diagram of how how the meeting works, how you would announce agenda items, how you handle questions and answers, the public comments, motions people make, all that. So it's pretty straightforward. And that's how we would conform our meetings to running under the Rosenberg's Rules of Order versus Robert's Rules of Order.
Where's the citation to use of Rosenberg Rules of Order in the policy manual? I guess that's what I'm trying to cross-reference right now.
It is,
Page 25. under the conducting of meetings prescriptions.
Ah. Number 6,
Number 6.
close to the top.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Craig,
I'd like to call for orders of the day.
don't push your luck.
I'm testing you on that one. Sorry, that's return to the agenda.
Well, what think you? Is this worthy of saying, yeah, this looks okay, or do you want to sit on this a little longer?
I'm fine with this. I know a lot of cities have adopted this, and this seems to be streamlined and very effective form of operating meetings. So it's a nice change and good to see this being considered.
Okay,
I agree.
does anybody agree enough to make a motion? And second a motion?
I'd move the policy changes as presented tonight.
Okay, so,
Second.
a motion and second to, on page 25, number 6, in our existing policies, to strike Robert's Rules of Order and add Rosenberg's Rules of Order. And in the third line, also strike Robert's rules and add Rosenberg's rules.
So just a clarification, the motion was to, as I understood it, to accept all of the changes we've brought for Phase 1, covering chapters 1 through 3. That includes Rosenberg, but everything else from chapters 1 through 3?
I'm not sure. My intent was to see if Rosenberg's was agreeable, and if it was, then to make a motion to adopt all 4 of them.
I was fine with the entire policy handbook.
You're
but
entire-
I'm
okay.
okay
But
with
just
that
through
policy
1 through 3,
as
though.
well.
We haven't
1 through
gotten
3.
to 4 yet.
Chapter 4.
Yeah.
That's correct. It would be all the the 4 changes that you've seen tonight to chapters 1, 2, and 3 that we've already blessed. And that's what I understand your
I'm fine with
motion
that.
was.
Yeah.
And I
That's my
understand
second.
Dennis's second was. And so I'll ask all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any commissioner opposed? Any commissioner abstaining? So that motion passes. And Candace and Keen, is that clear, or do you want me to restate all that? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we have a new proposed changes to our chapter that deals with our regulatory responsibility. And that starts on page 49 of your,
Mr. Chair, can I make a suggestion that
sure,
this item, as far as the next phase, be carried over to the next meeting when there's more commissioners here and it's not as late?
that's fine.
The other just observation I would make is a lot of at least the initial items seem to be, I would assume, stating principles that are derived from statutory law. Is that right?
Yeah.
So it would be very helpful to include the site at the end of the statement. And that would really, throughout that section, hold true at the end of each statement, I would think, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Right. An example would be page 51, consolidation policy. The goals are very clear, to reduce aggregate costs of service, improve local government accountability. But the prior statements, there may not be a connection unless there's legislative authority to do that.
Right.
So I
Okay.
think that's the
So Damon, if I may ask a question, does your comment go to not only chapter 4 we're looking at, but it should go for the whole document?
I mean, I didn't, when you're just talking about internal controls and operations, that's different than this section, which really goes to the heart of what LAFCO is what it's authorized to do, what kind of activities it engages in, which in my view is 100% derived from statutory
Yeah.
mandates, authority, limitations. Do you see?
I see what you're
Jeff,
saying,
do
the
you
the
see?
basis of your authority
Yeah.
should be in there.
Whereas 1 through 3, I think, is probably an amalgamation of what are best practices
Best
for an
practice for running our
organization
business. Yeah,
and
no, I understand that.
detection of fraud and
Yeah, no, I understand
know,
that. Yeah, that makes
um,
sense. Okay, so we've got a recommendation from Dennis that we hold this over, and from Damon that we put the statute authority in there where it's appropriate in for when you come back, so that there would be some change when you
Yes.
come back. Can that be done
Oh,
in time for the? 14th?
Absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
I don't want to put an obligation on you that's going to be hard to carry out.
We will be ready.
Okay, I knew I'd get that answer.
And so just for my clarification, so we will come back to you, and I'll confer with the chair whether it be May 14th or your June 11th meeting, but we'll come back with Chapter 4, and we'll go from there.
Good,
Gar-
good, thanks. So then, we'll move on to the legislative report. This is also an action item. And we'll open the public hearing at that next meeting on this then, since we're
Sure.
moving it. We're essentially introducing it at this point, and we'll move it to the next meeting where we'll open the hearing. Okay. The legislative report.
So relatively quickly, Chair, your legislative committee, which includes Commissioners Phillips, Connolly, and Burdick, bring to you a couple of items that we think are of interest to at least get on your radar. And there are two particular bills we think that the time is right to support and issue a letter to that end. And in drawing from our agenda report, the three bills of interest all come from the Assembly. We've outlined them in our report. Two of them, Assembly Bills 448 and 851, these are the bills that the committee is coming unanimously with a support recommendation, and they both take different angles at addressing issues relating to the perfection or at least the processing of city boundary changes. Assembly Bill 448, interesting enough, it would simply reinstate something that was a given up until 2011. Specifically, it would reinstate the proportional vehicle license fee funding that cities used to get anytime they annexed inhabited areas, like islands. And the idea was, there's cost impacts to cities when they take on developed areas, and so the legislature, by practice, used to acknowledge that through, again, just a proportional bump in the vehicle license fee that would be doled out on a per capita basis to cities. Well, that went away as part of the 2011 state budget process. I don't know why, but it's caused a bit of an inequity for cities to go forward with big-scale annexations of developed areas. And the reason why I think this is pertinent to Marin LAFCO, although on a smaller scale, if we were to ever go forward with a island annexation here in this county, this bill would at least help reconcile to a degree that funding and cost impact to a city. So again, the committee recommends a support position on that, and that parallels Cal LAFCO. The other bill relating to cities is on the completely opposite end. Assembly Bill 851 would update disincorporation proceedings. Right now, if you opened up LAFCO law and you opened up the section relating to disincorporations, it's from 1963. It hasn't been updated in any substantive way because there's only been a couple of disincorporations to begin with over the last 50 years. One was done directly by the legislature. The other one, I guess in Riverside County, did go through the process, but it hasn't been an issue. Well, obviously, economic times are different. This is becoming a more pressing issue for Cal LAFCO, so they've sponsored this bill to provide a clear direction to all 58 LAFCOs on what we should be doing when we get an application, perhaps to disincorporate. And that this bill makes it clear that it doesn't necessarily just have to be the city that would be the applicant. Another party could be the applicant. And I think that's an important policy comment. For example, if a county decided, a city was going down a path that was problematic, they could perhaps cut their losses and jump in before things got out of hand or more out of hand. So consistent with Cal LAFCO, we'd recommend support position on this bill as well. And then last but not least, and this is really a telegraph for more discussion at your next meeting, a freshman assembly member, Bill Dodd out of Napa, has introduced a really interesting bill that strikes a couple of holy grails in the world of LAFCO. And the baseline issue is right now under LAFCO law, LAFCOs are the entity that is responsible for approving requests from cities or districts to provide new or extended services beyond their physical jurisdictional boundary by contract or agreement. The legislature tells LAFCOs, we really don't want you to do this, but if you do, there's some very limited approvals that you can make. When it comes to approving outside services beyond spheres, the legislature tells you you should only be doing this if you can document a public health or safety threat. This bill, AB 402, would create a new window. It would allow any of the 58 LAFCOs, based on local conditions and policies, to approve an outside service extension beyond a sphere, irrespective of a public health or safety finding. This is a big issue in the world of Cal LAFCO, and there's a pro argument and there is a con argument. Cal LAFCO actually drafted this bill a few years ago internally. It was so divisive, the membership dropped it because you had half the association for it, half the association against it. Assemblymember Dodd was a member at Napa LAFCO, and he had a copy. And so when he got elected, this is one of the priorities he's decided to push forward with or without Cal LAFCO support. What I propose is, and the committee proposes, is for you to just kind of get this on your radar, and at your next meeting, we come back to you with a more substantive discussion, because it does strike on a lot of different chords. So we're recommending watch, but we definitely want to come back to you at your next meeting. So with that, our recommendation is to go ahead and issue support positions for AB 448 and 851 and come back to you at your next meeting for 402.
Okay. You need a motion to,
Well, I would
do
also
that.
just defer if Commissioners
Oh,
Connolly
I'm
or
sorry.
Burdick would like to add anything to the discussion.
I think Keene has stated it well. We do feel that we'd be prepared to offer support positions for 448 and 851, but are not ready to take a position, let alone certainly to support 402 without further analysis, given the concerns.
okay, so does any member in the public have any comments they would like to make on this matter?
Chair, is it
Yes.
inherent, or do we need to specifically direct our executive officer to draft letters of support? Supporting it.
So long as there's consensus, I would take the nod of approval as authorization.
Okay, so it's a consensus of the commission to offer approval for 448, 851, and we'll put a hold on 402 until we discuss it at our next meeting and figure where we're gonna go from there. Yes?
I'll move that alternative action one.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and second to approve the executive officer issuing comment letters for the chair to sign consistent with support for AB 448 and AB 851.
Aye.
And that's it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any commissioner abstaining or opposing? No. Commission, motion passes. And we will move to the special district elections to the commission.
Very quickly, Chair, Candace has been dutifully managing two separate special district elections to Marin LAFCO, one for the regular regular special district seat that Dennis is leaving, and then the alternate seat is also up. We just wanted to give you a quick update. The deadline to submit applications is April 20th. We're pleased to note that we already have gotten enough ballots from the 30 independent special districts to ensure we have a quorum. So one way or the other, winners will be announced on April 21st.
Okay.
And that is it.
I assume you do not have a report then?
I do not.
Any commissioner have a report or an announcement or a request? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to our next meeting, which we anticipate will be a special meeting on the 14th of May at 7 o'clock in these chambers. Any motion to adjourn? This is your opportunity.
Move to adjourn.
I'll
Thank
second.
you. Motion and second to adjourn. We're adjourned.